All right. Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome all of you to our webinar today, Born to Lead, Empower Women for a Brighter MENA Future. It's an exciting topic that I'm happy to be moderating this session. My name is Amer Barghouth. I am a program manager with RTI International, a US-based research institute that implements projects for international development agencies, including USAID. And I'm currently focusing on a project to promote off-grid investments in improving access to electricity in Africa. We have an exciting panel today. I'm proud to present Sarah Ibrahim El-Hag, who's a senior sustainable energy specialist at the Regional Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency, and Shaima Bidawi Alam, who is a microfinance expert currently at UMass. It's a great honor to have these two panelists who have been able to and let's call it by what it is. There is definitely a barrier to women's involvement in the energy sector. The energy sector is an important sector, yet it's challenging for women, especially in the MENA region, to participate in this sector and to reach leadership positions within this sector. But our panelists have been able to participate meaningfully in this sector and break a lot of the barriers that have traditionally stopped women from meaningfully participating in the sector. I'll turn it over to Sarah in a couple of minutes to present to you on her experience in the energy sector, and then to Shaima. But first, I wanted to just share a couple of brief ideas to frame the discussion. So, as I said, the energy sector is a sector that's mostly dominated by men. Not a lot of space for women to participate. This is changing, obviously, but it's not changing as fast as we want it to. And I just would like to state three main reasons as to why it makes sense for more gender equity in the energy sector. And the first one, and I'm looking at it from the perspective of private companies and the private sector, where a lot of the energy work gets done. The first one, it makes business sense to invest in equity, gender equity, and women participating in this sector. Companies that do have women in leadership positions as well as in project management positions tend to perform better financially. They tend to have better staff retention. They tend to have improved revenues and improved profitability. And this is something that is being acknowledged among the business community, and there's a stronger push for more gender equity. There was a study recently that looked at utilities and large companies in the energy sector, and they found out that these companies that had women's representation on their board of directors tend to have more climate smart policies and investments, and they tend to be more serious about reducing their carbon footprint. The other reason why I think it's important to involve women in the energy sector, it also makes financial sense as a company or as an investor to have more gender equity. In general, and this is probably something Shaima will touch on, in general, women tend to be to have less defaults. They tend to be better at repaying their loans, and they tend to be more reliable customers in terms of making payments on time, if it's for a utility or an off-grid company. So it makes financial sense. It's less risky to serve women as customers and to have women as financial managers and accountants. And then the third reason, and I think this is the the most obvious reason, but also the most important reason. It makes sense. It's the right thing to do to have women involved in the energy sector. The diversity of perspectives, the experiences that women bring to the energy sector are important, and they will be important going forward as our communities and our governments try to deal with the climate change impact. We need that diversity. We need women in leadership positions, in policymaking positions, so they can help us find a more resilient path to development going forward. So with these 3 comments, I would like to open it up to our panelists, and I'll start with Sarah.
Thank you, Amr. Hello, everybody. My name is Sarah Ibrahim Al-Haj. I'm talking to you on behalf of the Regional Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency. And today I'll be presenting women in the energy sector in the MENA region. So in this presentation, I'll be giving a very quick introduction about the MENA region and the energy, climate change, and gender nexus. And I'll be giving a little bit of a presentation about the global energy statistics and how women participate in it, the challenges, the barriers, and the potential role of women in the sector. We'll then be talking about some recommendations and actions needed to go forward and how women can help each other. And I'll finalize by giving and sharing with you a success story on how women can lead change in their societies. Okay, so the MENA region is a region that's constituted of around 20 plus countries in the Middle East and North Africa. The region is very rich in its energy resources, with about 57% of the proven oil reserves and around 41 proven natural gas resources. The region is also blessed with abundant solar irradiation, and it is estimated to offer around 45% of the world renewable energy potential. So, however, a number of countries in this region has reached around 100% of the energy access rate. Still, there is a gap between countries that are rich in oil resources and other countries. The things that have led to around 28 million people lacking electricity within this region, 8 million of them still depending on traditional biomass. This region is also quite vulnerable to climate change and suffers from water scarcity, taking into our mind that the population and most of the economic activities reside within the flood-prone coastal zones. So the region is high in population, high in economic growth and rapid urbanization, but this also puts a lot of pressure on the existing infrastructures, which creates great energy demand, the things that has serious implications on the region climate and natural resources. So this is a challenge that the region actually faces. And in order to face this challenge, it's important that we work in the delivery of energy services that are in line with sustainable development and economic growth. And it's also important that we safeguard the environment and natural resources. Of course, this has to be done and requires innovative situations and solutions, and it requires integration of all the society. Men and women have to work hand by hand in gender equality in order to ensure the energy security and to mitigate the climate change. Now, taking a little bit of a closer look into the climate change, energy access, and gender nexus, and looking into the region, we can see that the women constitute around 48% of the total population of the MENA region, and hence, we have a very powerful potential task force to combat the climate change and to achieve the sustainable development goals. And namely, here I'm talking about goal number 7, which states ensuring access to affordable, reliable, sustainable energy for all. But of course, to do this, we need to implement sustainable energy and policies in the region. Okay, that being said, it would be surprising to know that, however, the women constitute 48% of the total population, they only constitute 26% of the total labor force. And this raises a very legitimate question, like why we have this low representation of women in the labor force. In spite of the economic development and modernization and advancement in the education field of the MENA region, we have women rates falling down to 26% for the employment. What will really be surprising for you to know is that the women surpasses male in university education, yet they still fell short when it comes to enrollment in scientific fields, that is science, technology, engineering, and mathematical field. And also this will be reflected in their participating into the workplace in energy sector specifically. So if we go to present global statistics on the energy sector and how women participate in that, we can see that women constitute only 30% of the education in the STEM fields. They only constitute 35% of the overall workforce. And when it comes to higher position like ministerial and policymaking position, the percent goes down to only 6%. So we can see that the challenge is not only unique to the MENA region, the challenge is universal. We go back one more time to the MENA region and investigate more closely the challenges to women enrollment in the energy sector. We can find and we can group them into 3 categories. So the first category, we can talk about barriers to entry to the sector in the first place. The second is barriers to stay within the sector after enrollment, and then we have institutional barriers. Starting with barriers to entry to the sector, an example would be the cultural and social norms that would shape the perception of gender roles. For example, we find that in this region, it's more acceptable for women to work on the medical field rather than to work on the energy sector. So this is one example of cultural norms that will prevent women from entering the field in the beginning. So the other group of barriers are barriers to stay within the sector after the enrollment. And one very important barrier is to maintain this very delicate work-family balance. Because of course, the energy sector is a sector where has very tough schedules, requirements, and it lacks flexi hours, it lacks working from home, and all these things are really important for women to maintain the delicate balance between work and family. The other more important reason is that we still have these wage inequities. And by that I mean that for the same equal amount of work, women are paid less than men. So this is a repelling factor, and they repel women from staying into the sector, and they go looking for different fields for employment or job. The third group of barriers are institutional barriers, and these are such as lack of childcare facilities, lack of supporting policies, and lack of vocational training. For example, not many countries have paternal leaves, so it's not a supportive environment for women to work in. Another barrier to talk about is to ask the unspoken question, and that is sky really the limit when it comes to women climbing the ladder of their career into the energy sector? Well, maybe the answer is no, and why is that? It's because of glass ceiling. By glass ceiling, I mean this is the invisible barriers that keeps women from taking influential position and senior positions through the whole renewable energy value chain. And that's why we find that there is a lack of equal representation of women in decision-making roles. However, some very recent studies has shown that any representation less than 15% of women into executive position will make women feel like they are invisible into workplace, they are marginal, and that their views are not taken really seriously, and they will not feel comfortable within this work environment. So the critical mass that we really need to maintain is to achieve the 30% representation of women into policy-making and decision-making positions, and that will make women feel that they are living into supportive environment. Some studies in women in clean energy in the MENA region has shown that only 10% of the companies have more women than men, with only 8% of them have strong women in the majority of the company. Around 30% of the companies have equal men and women, and around 50% have more men than women in the companies working in the region. Now, let's discuss the potential roles of women into the renewable energy sector in specific, and let us discuss it as women as a leader and for women as a consumer. So, women as leaders, it was found that businesses, I think this is what has Amr just touched upon a few minutes ago, businesses with women in leading managerial position are more likely to invest more in green and renewable energy sector. And of course, this is very beneficiary to the economic of the country and the region as a whole. And also it was found that leaders in rural communities were found more proactive to deliver renewable energy solutions such as solar and wind, which is, of course, facilitate the gradual change in social and cultural norm, which is something all the country and the community should be working toward. On the other hand, if we talk about women as consumer, recent studies on gender-based differences in energy consumption behavior has shown that women, in average, are lower in energy consumption than men. They are more sustainable consumer and highly value eco-labeled products. So they are more willing than men to change their energy-related behavior for sustainability reasons. And this shows that women are more ready to take a leading role in the implementation of climate change and energy efficiency measures. So what is needed to be done and what should we be doing to go forward? So here are a number of recommendations and actions that are needed to facilitate the gender mainstreaming in the renewable energy sector. Let's talk about mainstreaming of gender in energy policies. And by this, we mean including and introducing women quota in energy program. Of course, this is needed at this stage in order to reach the gender equality. We also need to work toward removing of social and cultural barriers toward women enrollment into scientific fields. And this should be done via awareness raising to the whole society. And especially this could be focused toward high school and colleges. We also need to be facilitating women access to training and skills and development programs. We need to work harder to provide finance for women entrepreneurs in the energy sector. This is, of course, this Shaima will be talking a lot more about later. And also we need to implement a lot of gender-sensitive economic employment policies. And by that, I mean introducing flexi-hour, work from home, and paternal leaves. And now let us talk about what women can do to help each other. Of course, the challenge is not easy, and all women should need to work together in order to break the glass ceiling and to achieve gender equality. For instance, women on leading position and policymaking position should work on lobbying for women empowerment. We should also have more women as leaders so that they can provide role models for other women and encourage them to the entry of the field. Professional women should do more networking to change the experience and exchange of professional experience. And of course, in the same workspace and work environment, women should work in support and solidarity to each other, and all women should be working towards raising the awareness towards their case. And last but not least, I would like to share with you this success story. The success story is all the way from Sudan, where elderly rural women who are illiterate have led the change in their community and worked to light up their community using solar home systems. So the whole story has started by a workshop in Kigali, Rwanda, on appropriate technology for rural communities, when Bunker Roy, who is the founder of Barefoot College, has been selected to give a speech, and after that he's selected to do a pilot project in Sudan. What happened thereafter is that a collaboration took place all the way from India to Sudan, when he developed a partnership with community-based non-governmental organization in a place called Nuba Mountain in the western of Sudan, and he signed what we call a community or college partnership agreement. This agreement has led to training of illiterate elderly rural women to be solar engineers, and they served their rural communities or worked as engineer in designing and implementing to light up their community with solar home system. Down there, you can see the photo of these women. There are elderly women, illiterate women around in their 50s and 60s. And by this, they have gone from bending completely into biomass and firewood into solar engineers. So this story basically shows how far empowered women can go and how far they can do into transforming their communities. Finally, I would invite all of us to think of the benefit of unlocking the potential of women in the MENA region. And I'll leave you with a statement published by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD. It states that the MENA region is losing an estimated of $575 billion a year due to the legal and social barriers that exist around women's access to jobs and careers. Let us all think of the cost of this lost opportunity. And to all women out there, I'm saying that one woman can make a difference, but together we can rock the world. Thank you very much. Thank you for giving me this time to speak. And of course, I'm open for any questions later. Thank you. Back to Amr.
Thank you, Sarah. This was a great way of framing the challenges and talking about the benefits. And I'm sure our participants will have more questions and would like to engage in more discussion. I'll turn it over to Shaima to give her presentation, and then we will open it up for questions for the audience.
Sure. Thank you, Amr. Thank you, Sarah, for the great presentation, of course. And I definitely agree with all the aspects you brought up to the discussion. And let's see how we can move this forward. So I'm so glad Sarah actually talked about the Sustainable Development Goal, because it's basically why we are here. We're having particular goals talking about the end of poverty and women equality and women empowerment. But let's take a closer look on Sustainable Development Goal number 13 that urges the world to take action to combat climate change and its impacts. And each Sustainable Development Goal has its own targets, and the target 13.2 are actually talking about the national policies, strategies, and planning. Target 13.B actually targeting women, not actually targeting women, but they are mentioning that some actions and mechanisms should be adopted, including focusing on women, youth, and local marginalized communities. So how about women in marginalized communities? Another important Sustainable Development Goal that comes to my mind when we think about women in the climate change and the green energy and the renewable energy sector is goal number 8, that actually talks about promoting the sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all. While target 8.3 is actually focusing on accessing finance and explicitly mentioning micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises and all the related financial services. So in the last slide, we saw that Sustainable Development Goal number 13 is talking about the climate change, and the Sustainable Development Goal number 8 is mentioning the micro, small, and medium enterprise finance and development. Climate change is a fact that we're living in, and as Sarah mentioned, the MENA region is very vulnerable to climate change. And the Global Climate Change or the Global Climate Risk Index for 2015 suggested that of the 10 most weather-related affected countries in the period from 1994 to 2013, 9 of those 10 countries are developing countries in the low income or lower middle income country group, and this is where most of the MENA region countries are. What does this mean? It means that the poor are the most affected and vulnerable societies and communities to climate change and all the related problems they are facing with the climate change. And it also means that they are affected because their livelihoods actually depends on their surroundings, depends on their environment, and depends on what is around them. They cannot travel a lot. The poor people, they cannot travel a lot. They cannot access a lot of other work opportunities. So for microfinance that was mentioned in the target number 8 and the goal number 8 and the target 8.3 of promoting access to small and medium enterprise finance. What is microfinance? Microfinance is a poor double bottom development tool because it focuses on the social and economic aspects, social and economic development for the poor. And it's basically, in a very brief and a nutshell definition, microfinance is providing the poor with the needed financial services according to their capacity to repay, and it's customized to their capacity and for their well-being. It was originally targeting women. The champion of the microfinance is Muhammad Yunus, who was awarded the Nobel Prize for Peace, Social Peace, because he thought of an idea of targeting women and financing their micro enterprise or micro projects. And this showed how this could help communities, families and communities through microfinance. The targeted group of the microfinance are the non-bankable, and by the non-bankable we mean people or women who cannot access banks for different and various reasons. One of the reasons might be them actually physically located in a remote area where there's no banking financial services are provided, or in some culture, women cannot travel for alone or for like long distances, so she cannot actually access the nearest bank in the nearest city if she's in a village or in a very remote village area or rural area. Or in some countries, some women actually lack the legal documentation. They don't have national IDs and they don't have birth certificate. There are various reasons why we have non-bankable population, and the majority of the non-bankable population across the world are always women. The main reason also why we have non-bankable population is basically because their financial needs doesn't meet the threshold of the banking sector, so they probably want a way less amount of credit from what the bank can actually offer them. What's good about the microfinance and what's tricky as well, that it depends on the relationship, on a personal relationship between the microfinance institution and the client. The relationship between the microfinance institution and the client is more of a personal relationship, because microfinance institution depends on a one-to-one relationship with the client. They don't depend on advertising or any printed material to seek or to reach out to the clients, because most of the clients are illiterate anyway, so they depend on like a physical outreach. They employ microfinance officers to do the physical outreach to the non-bankable population wherever they are in the rural areas, and they build a personal relationship with the clients through their microfinance officers. So this is about the microfinance and climate change. How could these two things be related? The climate change and all the changes that is affecting the livelihoods of the poor and the microfinance. We have the green microfinance now, since we have also green finance. There's a new field of research that started to emerge in the early 2010 about green microfinance, and it basically works on combining the two terminologies we just talked about, or the two phenomena we talked about, the climate change and the microfinance all together, in a way that responds to the different challenges the poor people actually might face and present them with opportunities. What's good about the microfinance, that it does not only focus about the benefits of the client, but it also focuses on sustaining the microfinance institution itself, the microfinance institution providing the financial services for the poor. And with considering green microfinance, now we can say that microfinance can easily be a triple bottom social development tool, where it actually targets the social economic development and combating the climate change. unfortunately, with all the missing data in the MENA region about the microfinance market, and particularly the green microfinance, we can bring success stories from other parts of the world and see how could this be easily uh, be applied in the MENA region. This success story is coming from Mexico. This sweet lady is a microfinance client in Mexico. She owns actually a kiosk. She sells beverages in a very hot city of Mexico. And one of the MFI's representatives, or the MFI's officers, as I've mentioned and explained earlier, approach her to introduce to her the concept of the energy saving refrigerator. At first, she wasn't at all interested. She didn't really know what would this mean, how could this help her. But when the loan officer told her that this would actually help you reduce your cost, she got interested. And when she switched to the energy efficient refrigerator, the numbers showed that her revenues increased as per her costs were definitely decreased, and she became an environment friendly lady. And this also increased her competitiveness in the market within her local neighborhood, because she was able to increase her income and add more products to her kiosk and so on. So how is the microfinance market in Egypt telling us, like the regular numbers? The microfinance activities in Egypt were existent early since the 1980s or a little bit earlier, but it was first regulated by the Microfinance Activities Law number 141 for year 2014, and it put the regulation of microfinance under the Financial Regulatory Authority in Egypt, where all the microfinance institutions has to get licensed from the FRA, the Financial Regulatory Authority, and they report their activities and portfolio to the FRA. The law stated that all the finance going to the microfinance clients, to the microfinance institution, should be income generating activities. So they were not financing here any personal loans or any non-income generating activities. And the fields mentioned in the law were basically the commercial, services, agriculture, or any production activities could be easily financed by microfinance institutions. To date, and according to the latest numbers the Financial Regulatory Authority released about the microfinance market in Egypt, the total active clients in 2018 reached 2.7 million active borrowers as we're talking right now. 67.78% of them are women. And we have more than 800 licensed microfinance institutions, NGOs, and private companies providing finance for the poor and providing finance all over Egypt in all the government rates. The 67.78% of the active women clients are basically, we're talking around 2 million women are borrowers in the microfinance sector in Egypt, and they're currently active borrowers. How could this still be related to the energy sector we're talking about? Let's have a look on one of the women microfinance clients in Egypt, and this sweet lady is coming from El Qalyubiyya, which is where I'm actually originally from. She's 53 years old, she's married, and she's a client of one of the very famous microfinance institutions, NGOs in Egypt, El Tadamun. El Tadamun is an NGO that's only targeting women. In Cairo, their headquarters are in Cairo, and they're spread out in many other governorates, and they target women all over the governorates they are working in. Nadia, this is her name. She started working 35 years ago when she was like very, very young, on basically doing the handmade baskets, mashallah. And then someone introduced her to dyeing the plants and the flowers she's surrounded with. And she always speaks, I never thought of this, although I've been always surrounded with all these flowers, plants, and all the things that I've been working with. They were always around me, but it never came to my mind that I can actually make money out of this. And once she was introduced to this dyeing flowers and dyeing plants, she started to produce more products with the handmade, with the environment, what environment is already giving her with her livelihoods, and she didn't have to travel so far. And she also is, we can consider her, of course, also a environment friendly microfinance client. Surprisingly, Nadia applied for a loan from Al Tadawun, and she was granted 10,000 Egyptian pounds. And this would tell how big her business is growing. And she managed to employ other women with her to help her. And her products reached out to traveled far away than she could ever. And she now sells her products in Cairo, Ismailia, Said, and even Alexandria. If we can think about those two examples from Mexico and from the Al from Egypt, the examples also Sarah mentioned about the solar energy and the solar system installments, and how this could be important and could be highlighted in the work of MFIs. If we can think about the change we can do to the climate by substituting and teaching our microfinance clients. We're currently talking about 2 million active borrowers, and the estimated numbers for the microfinance market says that we're only targeting 25% of the potential demand in the Egyptian market, which means that there's a huge place and huge market to expand our services. If we can only think about sustainable energy and sustainable environment projects that we can introduce to our clients or encourage them. It's the microfinance institutions that actually supposed to be grasping these opportunities and introducing them to their clients, because as we mentioned before, the clients are least educated, they are least privileged, and they don't have access to a lot of information. But once they get introduced to how they could substitute very simple things to their products, they increase the revenue, and they definitely increase their competitiveness. And it also tells that they can repay their loan, although I must say that, yes, financial sense, women are always repaying their loans more than men, and this is proven statistically all over the world. But even though, if they can repay their loans even more better in a more sustained way, it means that microfinance institution business itself is more sound, and this is also what Amir was referring to, the business sense. So how can we help with this? As I mentioned, with all these numbers, we're still targeting only 25% of the potential market in Egypt. We need a more gender-sensitive reports and data on microfinance. We need to know where are those 2 million active borrowers are physically located. We need to know of the 4 main microfinance activities mentioned in the law: the commercial, the agriculture, the services, or the production. How % of those activities are led by women? Where are the finance of women is located? And we need to provide the microfinance institutions themselves a tool or many tools to identify green micro businesses and how they could be financing this to women. We can think of mushroom planting, basically, in the houses, because women are housebound in their services and in their business most of the time. And we can think again of installment of the solar energy cells. There are millions of things that we can think of, but like looking at the finance and the sustainability of the finance from the microfinance sector and perspective, it is more sustainable for both the microfinance institution and the women themselves, and this could contribute significantly to combating microfinance, to combating the climate change, not the microfinance, I hope. If we only think about very simple solutions to introduce to our clients with the volume we have in our developing countries, since microfinance is targeting the poor. There's a lot of potential market to be targeted and a lot to be done in a very, very simple, cost-efficient manner. I hope this was helpful, and definitely I would love to discuss this with you further. Thank you.
Thank you, Shaima, for this overview of microfinance and the ways in which it can empower women to participate in economic activities, as well as benefit from new technologies and have access to climate resilient solutions for their lives. So we have about 17 minutes for questions. I'll open, we do have a Q&A box for the audience to send their questions. It's at the bottom of the window. It says Q&A, so please feel free to type in your questions. In the meantime, I have a couple of questions for our panelists that I would like to ask, and I'll ask the panelists to try and limit their answers to about a minute or less, so we can squeeze in some of the more questions. So I see we have about 30 participants in the audience, of which I'd say about 2/3 are women. They obviously care about energy sector and they would like to participate meaningfully in this sector. My question to both panelists is, if I were a young woman who wants to participate in the energy sector, give me your advice. How can I break that barrier? I mean, I've studied in a related field in STEM or engineering or finance, or any of the various disciplines that have energy in them. I keep applying to jobs, but I see mostly male colleagues being selected for these jobs. So what can I do to be able to join the sector and to be gainfully employed in it, or not employed, maybe also as an entrepreneur? Let's start with Sarah and then go to Shaima.
Okay, Amr, I think I'll just be giving my personal perspective. I think just keep trying and never give up. And you need to reach out for other women who can give you an advice and show you how they pave their way. It's not easy. Of course, personally, I have been rejected for jobs because they were designed for males. Of course, this is an unwritten code, because sometimes you will have this publication for a job and you'll be very, very optimistic and you go try to grab your chance, but then you'll just be feeling like, what's wrong? What have I missed? But then you need to know that the most important thing is never give up and never lose your confidence as a woman. Of course, not you, I'm just talking to the women out there, in yourself. Definitely keep trying and keep doing it. And definitely if you need it that bad, you will have it.
Well, yes, I definitely agree with you, Sarah, was never giving up. But I've always seen women that they're very smart because they never get shy or they never get afraid asking questions. So I would encourage this young lady to ask questions, to ask for directions all the time, and to be observant of her surroundings, because many of the times the solution is always around us. It's just like we're so mind-bound about a particular solution while there's a lot to be done around us. It's not easy to be a business owner. It's not easy to be an entrepreneur. It's more or less, if it's not a talent, it takes a lot of work to be an entrepreneur. But thinking differently is always the solution. And if this young lady is interested in being into the energy sector and into the environment and climate change combating efforts, there's a lot of things to be done. She can think of substituting a lot of the materials she might be using in her enterprise or in her production with more eco-friendly products. which is also more cheaper and would definitely help her also financially and would make her return on investment higher. And I would also think that she might consider to learn new skills, learn new handcraft. There's always a room for improvement, and there's always a new thing to be done. And the more different and the more unique she is, the more successful she would easily be.
Thank you. We have a question. Well, actually, I'll ask one question, and then we have a question from Abir that I will share with you in 1 second. But before we do that, so we talked about the 2/3 that are women who are in the audience. Now let's talk about the third who are men. Okay, so I'm convinced, you know, I'm a young man or you know, a more seasoned professional or businessman. I am convinced that it's important to mainstream gender and to improve the participation of women in the energy sector. What can I do as a man to help with that? Shaima?
So this is a great question. So what a man can do is actually to think equally of their female counterparts. They shouldn't be thinking less of her, or they shouldn't be think that they are more privileged or smarter than her, because unfortunately in so many cultures and in so many settings, we're brought up to be or to see men as scientists, because women's brain cannot actually take it. And I believe Sarah would talk more about this. But for the day-to-day life, I would definitely urge you and urge all young men to think equally of their women counterparts, and also to think of the privilege a man actually always have within the community and women cannot have. It's a privilege that's a very simple thing that's in a more generic way is like in MENA region, in very, very simple example, men are more comfortable walking in the streets than men. This is a privilege than women. This is a privilege a woman cannot actually have. So if you really started to observe and to think of the privileges a man in a society already is enjoying, you might find a lot of ways to help women with you. And I guess the first thing that you should start with immediately right now is to raise the awareness of other men, because they would definitely listen to you first before they listen to other women. So this would be actually great. And thank you for asking this great question, Anne.
Sarah?
Definitely, Amr, this is a great question. So I'll just shape my answer into two parts, as a professional and as a personal side. So as a professional, I completely agree with Shaima, is that you need to think of her as a human being, and we need to stop like the men and women, especially at workplace, because definitely if we started looking at women as colleagues, as human beings, professionally, then I think a lot of decisions would have been changing into workplace, and the work environment would be more inviting and welcoming to women. So at a personal level, I think it's just to try to make the tasks at a social level equal. For example, we have been discussing about women having to make this delicate balance between the work and family task. Of course, the task at the household, of course, this is changing now, but traditionally a cultural norm, it's that the task that a woman has to do within the household is not even comparable to the task that a man has to do. So I think this is one thing that at the social level we can work on. And of course, the awareness, it's a responsibility for everybody, for women and men. And I think we need to work collaboratively for this, jointly, to reach the gender equity.
Thank you. And let me actually ask the question, and I'll stay with you, Sarah, and it's from Abir. And she's asking, what makes women's involvement in the energy sector different than other sectors? Why do we see women's participation, you know, to be more prevalent in banking, for example, as opposed to energy, utilities, and renewable energy?
Well, actually, my answer would be it's the other way around. It's actually not different. It's just as all other parts. Women had proven their excellence, and they can excel in each and every other aspect. And the energy sector is not of any different. It's not because it's easy. It's not easy, and it's not because finance is more difficult or this is no. Because a woman can do whatever task that she set her mind to do. Based on capabilities, because the capabilities are different from one human being to another. The only thing that is special about women in the energy sector is that they are more compassionate. It's a fact. They're more compassionate, and studies have proven that they have more genuine passion into issues related to climate. They're more. They can go greener. They can go the extra mile. Go out of their way to go for eco-labeled products. So this is the only different, but this is not only as a professional, it's also as a consumer. But as a professional, I think it depends on your capability of in your passion, and it's just like any other sector. So we shouldn't shy away, we shouldn't back off.
Thank you. I'll ask the next question to Sarah, and it's this question. Men are more competitive than women, and the economy that we operate in places a high premium on competitive behavior, right? So it's all about, men going out there and like competing with each other and making money and stuff. Whereas women are, the perception is, they're gentler, they're less competitive, they're more collaborative, they're more about teams, they're more about the long term than the short term. So I guess the question is, do women need to be acting more competitively to succeed in this world? Or there is a specific mindset that women bring to the workplace that adds value and is not necessarily competitive?
Okay, this is really interesting, Amr. So, do you think this is true? Actually, have you had a vicious woman colleague ever? So, I come from a consultancy background. I see women as competitive as hell. I see they can compete. They go after what they want. I see them, and if they set in their mind that they want to do something, I think they will get it. And I think, yes, it's in a different mindset, but I don't think they put that mindset within work. If they're good team players, but yes, I will say that this goes back again to difference in human nature. So it's different from one person to another. I wouldn't say that it's different from women and men. So I bet you haven't met someone who's really strong-headed yet, women in work. And good for you so far. So I think, Shaima, you can add on that.
Yeah, Shaima, please.
Well, of course, I agree with you, Sarah. And I don't know about competitiveness, but I would say that women are more collaborative, and they will bring a higher spirit to any teamwork they would work with. I don't know. Like I'll stop here because I'm not really sure about the competitiveness of men versus women in different fields. I would say yes, in the MENA region, men are more privileged, but this doesn't mean that they are competitive. And I would say that we need to do a lot of reform in the education system on a very, very early basis for changing the mindsets. And promote equality in thinking, and we can take simple examples like we can see more women coming into the mathematics field, in the science field, it's very ironic that we see women as doctors, and this is like a very hardcore exact science, but they're not as trusted as engineers, for instance, which is very weird. I would say women are more collaborative if we're selecting between collaboration and competition. But I'm not sure about the competitiveness edge of men versus women.
Thank you. All right, so we have 3 minutes left, and I'm trying to be cognizant of everyone's time. There are way too many questions. So what will happen is we can respond to these questions in writing. Just to make sure all the questions are answered, I'm going to ask my colleagues, Shaima and Sarah, to answer these questions in the box of Q&A. But let's take the next 3 minutes to, going back to the question of, as a young woman who wants to break into the sector, what should I do? You said, be persistent, think outside the box. Can you point them to resources that they can, where can they build their knowledge? Are there available resources? Because, not everyone has access to universities. Not everyone can go to, a master's program or a PhD program. So in the absence of everyone having that type of opportunity, are there online resources that are free? Are there available resources in the community that they can access to help prepare them for a career in energy? And it's both to Sarah and Shaima, or whoever feels they can answer this question.
I'll take this just to build on my presentation because, as I mentioned, microfinance is like two ends relationship. It's the microfinance institution and the clients. And because the general population of microfinance are way less privileged and less educated, I would take an advantage of the microfinance institution and would urge them actually to start identifying opportunities where they want to invest their finance into projects that is related to renewable energy, and it's profitable for both the clients and definitely for the institution itself. And personally, I know this is already happening in different initiatives in Egypt. I would mention, for example, the Alexandria Businessmen Association. They are working on such research and identifying projects that involves women, and it also connects the small piece of the project they are financing into a bigger chain, the whole market chain as a total, which is a great work. And I don't know if I can share more about this, but I know this is an initiative they are working on. I know there are other initiatives that are scattered all over Egypt, but this needs to be magnified, this needs to be highlighted, and this needs to be coming up into the public awareness area of the microfinance. We need to talk more about the opportunities of green microfinance. We need to urge clients to trust that if they substituted some of their products, they can actually increase the revenue and definitely be able to increase their competitiveness in the market. So I would think that it is the microfinance institution role to take a step forward within this regards, to educate the public and to invest in their microfinance clients as well and their success.
All right, so we're over time. I'm just gonna give Sarah 1 second, 1 minute, not 1 second, just to talk about RECRE and what available resources through RECRE for women who want to pursue careers in energy. Because I worked for RECRE myself, and I know RECRE runs really good programs for early career professionals to participate in the energy sector. So maybe, Sarah, you could take a minute to just give an overview of different ways in which RECRE helps in this area.
Thank you, Amr, for this. So basically, I'll start by talking about the environment. I think we've managed to have an environment where there is, let's not say completely equal, but it's inviting for women to work. I think this is very important, and it's inviting for both genders. And Recruit invites even the youth with the APSI programs, where we take young students who would like to enter the field. They'll be trained for 6 months, and they will experience the different parts of the energy sector, the energy efficiency, and they will shape their experiences, and then they will be back to the market ready with a lot of experience. And in this, it's not different between men and women, and I would emphasize that it's important to have women have equal opportunity. We're not asking for any privileges. It's just to be treated equally, and this is something that Recruit has made possible for the youth from both genders. And also there are all these web resources starting from the web links and the website, where we can have access to different studies, different statistics about the MENA region, about the world, different studies. So you can go in and you can dig in and you can find where you belong, you can find what it really attracts you, and then you can decide where you can head in the future. And of course, I still say that once there is equal opportunity and you have the persistence, you can reach anywhere, either if you're man or woman, man or boy. Thank you, Al.
Just to add to that practical question. So APSI is twice a year, right?
Yeah, exactly.
When is the next application round? Do you know off the top of your head?
Actually, I've just closed an application, and we're doing the selection for the candidates now, and we're expecting them pretty soon. So, but nevertheless, it's twice a year, 6 months. It's an incredible experience based on the reviews of everybody who has participated in the program, and a new batch will be released to the market, filled with experience, hopes, and they know what to do in their way ahead.
And it's a paid program, right?
Yes, of course. Yes, yes, of course. It's based just on your abilities. You can beat, and if you're selected, it's a paid program.
Yeah, which is a great way for people who are starting their career.
Of course. I would invite, I will take this just opportunity to invite people to visit the website so they can get more acquainted with the program and the organization Recruit, so they can see all possible opportunities and the resources they can make use of.
And one more program, and I'm not sure, you know, how familiar you are with it. I know it's within Recruit, is the PASMP, right? So the Clean Energy Management Professional Certification Program, which would be another way also for you know, men and women who want to advance in the energy sector to receive certification, which is recognized in the Arab region as you know, a certified professional in the field of energy management.
Of course, it's a PASMP. This is for people who are advanced, a little bit advanced in their career, and they need to focus in certified energy management programs. So also the PASMP is now officially accredited in Egypt, in Jordan as well. So a lot of countries are now adopting the program. So I think this is one way to get to advance in the career, and it's of course for both women and men. And the APSI are for young or let's say the youth who were starting within their career.
Great. All right, I know I have questions, the audience has questions, but we're already 6 minutes over the end of this webinar. So I'd like to thank the audience for attending and for participating with questions, and we hope that we will be able to speak with you again on this topic or on a different topic. I would also like to thank both panelists for their excellent insights and for making themselves available to answer your questions. I would like to thank Recruit for organizing this and with ATA Insights. And yeah, thank you all. And I will share also my contact information, the panelists as well, and I'll volunteer myself as well as the panelists answer any questions, to, you know, I like to have informational discussions with people who want to explore careers in international development or in the energy sector. So I'm more than happy to spend, you know, if you reach out to me, if you're in the audience, I'm more than happy to spend 20, 30 minutes on a Skype call with you, just, you know, familiarizing you and giving you advice. Because I think it's our responsibility to make sure that people have access and people understand the opportunities that await them. There are opportunities out there. We will help you connect with these opportunities. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. Bye-bye.